Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the Chinese Imperial Court. We're going to go beyond the official histories, drawing from some pretty revealing sources, to get at the unwritten and often brutal rules that really decided who lived and who died in one of the most powerful empires on Earth. I mean, really think about that. The history we all learn in school, it's the highlight reel, right? But what about the stuff that was left on the cutting room floor? What happens when you look at the parts they didn't want you to see? Because, the official story is always a good one. It's filled with glorious empires, all-powerful emperors, wise rulers making all the right decisions. It's this perfect narrative of power and order, all carefully packaged for future generations. Yeah, but behind all that, it was a whole different world. A treacherous one, governed by a completely different set of principles. These weren't laws written down on some fancy scroll. Nope. These were rules written in blood, whispered in shadowy hallways. Rules that you had to understand if you wanted to survive. So let's get into the first unspoken rule, the illusion of power. You could have the grandest title in the land, right? You could be the king, the emperor, but it turns out that title didn't guarantee a thing. In fact, if you weren't careful, it was basically a death sentence. And there's no better example of this than the chilling story of Qi Huanggang. So picture this. The king's most trusted advisor, Guanzong, is on his deathbed, and he uses his last breath to give his king this one desperate warning. Do not trust Yi Ya, Shu Diao, and Kaifeng. Now the king, he just can't believe it. Yi Ya, after all, had once cooked his own son just to please the king. Shu Diao had castrated himself just to be able to serve in the palace, and Kaifeng had literally abandoned his own family to serve him. But Guanzong's logic was terrifyingly simple. He said, a man who doesn't love his own son, his own body, or his own parents, how could he possibly love his king? Well, the king ignored the warning, and guess what happened? The moment the king got sick, those three men made their move. They sealed the palace. They even built a wall around the gates so no one could get in or out. And this once great king, one of the most powerful men of his time, was left all alone in his own palace to starve to death. His body lay there for 67 days before anyone found it. So that's the illusion of power. Rule number 2 takes this a step further. In the Imperial Court, reality wasn't fixed. The actual, objective truth, that could be a huge liability. If you wanted to survive, let alone get ahead, you had to be willing to accept whatever version of reality was most convenient for those in charge. This brings us to a famous Chinese idiom, zhi lu wei ma, which literally means to point at a deer and call it a horse. And it comes from a true story. A seriously powerful eunuch, Zhao Gao, wanted to see who was really loyal to him and not the emperor. So he brings a deer into court and says to the young emperor, "Your Majesty, look at this fine horse I brought for you." The emperor just laughs and says, that's a deer. So Zhao Gao turns to all the officials in the court and asks them what they see. The ones who told the truth, the ones who said, yeah, that's a deer, were secretly marked down. A few days later, all of them were executed on fake charges. The message couldn't be clearer. Your own eyes are lying to you. My reality is the only one that matters. And this idea of bending reality, it was perfected in the art of flattery. Get this. During the reign of Empress Wu Zetian, one of her favorites was this really handsome guy named Zheng Chengzong. A courtier tried to compliment him and said, the sixth son's face is like a lotus. But the chancellor, young Zhaoxi, a true master of this game, immediately stepped in and corrected him. He said, you are wrong. It's not that the sixth son is like a lotus, it's that the lotus is like the sixth son. It's completely absurd, right? But it's also genius. He literally bent the laws of nature to flatter power. That's how you showed your loyalty. That's how you survived. So you have this whole system built on fear and over-the-top flattery. And a system like that comes at an unbelievable cost. And that brings us to our final unspoken rule. The price of playing this power game was quite literally everything. And no one shows us this better than the most corrupt official in all of Chinese history. 800 million. Let that number sink in. That is the estimated fortune in silver taels that was taken from just one official, He Shen, when he was finally taken down in 1799. For more than 20 years, he was the absolute favorite of the Qianlong emperor, and he used that favor to build a personal fortune that is just almost impossible to wrap your head around. To put that into perspective, take a look at this. His personal fortune was about 20 times the entire annual income of the whole Qing Empire. The national treasury was practically empty, but this one guy's personal vaults were overflowing with cash. It even led to a famous saying at the time: once Heishen falls, the jockeying emperor is full. The new emperor didn't even waste a day. The day after the old emperor died, he had Heishen arrested, forced him to commit suicide, and seized every last bit of his fortune to refill the state's empty bank account. So when you put all these pieces together, the king who was betrayed and starved, the deer that had to be a horse, the world-bending flattery, the mind-blowing greed, you start to see what was really going on behind the throne. And here's the main takeaway. All the official decrees, the military plans, that's only part of the history. The real engine driving the Imperial Court, day in and day out, was just raw human nature. Fear, greed, and the desperate, desperate need to please the person who held the power of life and death in their hands. These unspoken rules shaped destinies and brought down dynasties just as much as any emperor's command. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? I mean, these are just the stories that manage to bubble up to the surface. If this is the history that's hard to look at, what other truths are still down there, buried, just waiting for someone to dig them up?